Hello, everyone. Today, I will be in a very interesting conversation with a highly respected industry leader and friend, Amit Chandra. Amit is the chairman of Bain Capital in India and a member of Bain's Asia Pacific leadership team. He serves on the boards of several global and Indian companies.
Thank you, Arun, for having me here today, and thank you for doing this important, conversation with many thought leaders, and certainly with me as well. I'm very happy to be a part of this conversation. I think the dialogue around climate change is probably going to be one of the most important dialogues for our generation. Um, you know, we've got to think very hard about what our legacy is going to be as a generation. The generation before us and our own generation is going to have to think very hard about what we're going to leave behind, not just for our own children and our grandchildren, but also for the generations to follow. The decimation of the environment and the implications of what's going to follow are going to weigh very, very heavy on our conscience. And I think as we know, the data tells us we've reached a point of close to no return if we don't act with some degree of urgency. And I think a lot of that, is at the doorstep of us business leaders. And of course, we need to act in partnership with governments. We need to do all of that, as we now know, with some degree of urgency. If we don't do all of that now, I think there will be really nothing left, and we'll see, calamities. We'll see devastation of the scale that we've never seen. A lot of that is, while it sounds alarmist, it also presents an opportunity of never before scale, because it's going to create new areas, new, businesses will get created pretty much like, threats in the past, be it the world wars and what devastation followed after that created. And so I think this is going to be probably one of the most important conversations, dialogues that has happened for the business community as a whole, in many decades. And I think it's a very, very important dialogue. It's a dialogue that people need to embrace without fear. And then importantly, it's a dialogue that people must act upon with a great degree of urgency.
Thank you, Amit. In fact, we totally agree with you. We are saying that this whole area of ESG and environmental sensitivity will be as transformative to enterprises as digital transformation, thinking things through in a sustainable way. The word we use is, will be a watermark running through everything that we do in business, being aware of ESG considerations. And the word of sustainable financing has recently been assailed by criticism that some of it could turn to be placebo remedies, preventing governments and regulators from taking the hard decisions required for transitioning to a net zero economy. In your view, Amit, what should the balance be? What should we expect from regulators in the government? And what would you expect the private sector, individuals like us, to do?
Arun, that's a great question. I think, first of all, I'd like to say that not so long ago, even as recently, I would say, as last year or the year before that, a lot of this was being treated as a fad or as a fashion. And I think very quickly people are realizing that, going back to my opening remarks, that it's both an opportunity and it's a threat. I would say, let me open up with the threat part of it. I think companies that don't embrace this with some degree of urgency will find themselves very quickly being marooned by the by global investors, jettisoned by them. And I think that's something that people need to think really, really hard about. Their access to capital will be completely jettisoned. Opportunity, because let me just present a very simple fact for you. If you go back and look at the 3 or 4 biggest periods of volatility in the last decade, the energy crisis, for example, the period which followed the Fed moving around interest rates. You look at COVID, or you indeed look at this year where we've had extraordinary volatility. You realize that between 75 to 95% of sustainable indices have outperformed other benchmark indices. Now that tells you that one of two things are happening. Either companies that are well governed on ESG are just simply, have their act together, or you realize that global investors are increasingly putting in more and more money into anything that has got to do with ESG, be it equity or debt. And I think we got to think very, very hard about both these trends. And I think personally, it's a bit of both. And so this is no longer just an opportunity or a threat. It's an imperative. We got to really embrace it. If you're a senior leader of a corporation or a board member, this has got to be absolutely central to your agenda.
Let me just move on to another agent player in this whole space. So the development financial institutions, how do you see them playing? What do they need to do to amp up a focus on ESG and sustainable financing?
Yeah, you see, Arun, the big challenge in case of countries like India is we don't have development financial institutions anymore. That space has got completely vacated. We had very robust DFIs all the way till early 90s, as you know, with ICICI and IDBI, and of course, after that, all these institutions have become first became universal banks and then really became commercial banks. And so I think the challenge that we have really in India is that we don't really have the concept of development finance anymore. I think so. If we really want to promote, this concept, I think it will have to be promoted by commercial banks in how commercial banks essentially act and behave. I honestly feel it's going to be very tough to expect the global development financial institutions, be it the arms of the, of IMF, of World Bank, or the UK entities to really come and try to expect things to change in countries like India. If we really want things to change, I think it will be incumbent upon our own banking system to, say that, okay, we want things in India to be different, and let's bring the norms, let's act together. And, we will all, if we think that a project is not good for the environment, we'll all not lend to this project. Or if we think a kind of, company is, not following right government practices, we'll all take that call together. I think that we need to evolve in that direction in my mind.
Yeah, thank you. I want to have one last question, and this is about ESG broadly. Today, the conversation a lot is on environment, but there's also the societal aspect and the governance aspect. So any thoughts from you on how we should think about the S and the G, in addition, of course, to the E?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a lot of the conversation has actually happened on the E and increasingly on the G. I think, and G has happened automatically because of governance. And I think the new SEBI norms will actually elevate the whole conversation on G. And I think firms like you all will have a big role to play with the new framework, which will make it mandatory for the large companies. I think this year is an option, and then next year I think it becomes mandatory. My own sense is that the E and the G will become a little bit will fall in place. I think it's the S that will really we'll have to really elevate that, Arun, to the next level. And you opened with the quote of Jamshedji Tata. I think that will really have to come from conscience, in my mind. I think because at the end of the day, I don't think society would have found itself in the place that it has found itself today if it really had if corporations and all of us would have had our conscience in the right place. I think it's basically because we have taken a lot of shortcuts, and profits have really landed up becoming the core of everything we have done, as opposed to, the community, that we've actually landed up, getting into the place that we have got to. I think if we really think a little bit more deeply about the consequences of our actions from a longer term perspective and put the community at the center of our actions, I think, things will work out a lot better. So I think you're ending probably on the right note. Every corporation, I think, needs to think a little bit more of the S, whether there is, a framework or there isn't a framework. If, the reason why I think the Tata Group is actually India's most respected group and probably one of the most respected groups in the world is because of its ethos. I think, the founders, enshrined it and endowed it to basically have a little bit more of a social ethos and make the community at the center of its existence.
No, those are great comments, Amit. The whole idea of purpose, in fact, when you talked about Jamshedji Tata, he started with purpose and profits followed. And restoring that ethos would be just very uplifting. Any final comments from you? I mean, you've been a tremendous person to talk with on this topic.
No, I think this is a great opportunity. The one thing that I think, look, I truly believe this is a great opportunity for India. I think we should embrace it not as as a threat that we have to comply with some framework, but we should really embrace it, because I think the world is moving in a direction where companies that embrace these frameworks will be differentially rewarded. I think the next generation of investors and consumers are going to think about corporations very differently from my generation and the generation before, where I think only profit was at the center of purpose of people's existence. And I think if people understand this and embrace it, I think they will take risk out of a big risk out of their existence. But they'll also, I think, realize that they can, get valued very differently. There's a premium that markets might ascribe to them, as we are beginning to see increasing evidence of. So I think, and apart from everything else, I think is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for the generations to follow. So I hope that, corporations like yours really need to guide people, because this is not an easy journey. It's not an easy journey to follow. Lots of changes need to be made, and it's like changing engines on a flying plane. So I think, I hope you're able to help a lot of companies in making those transitions, as they navigate this journey. But it's a great opportunity. It's going to be lots of excitement in making these changes over the years to come.
So thank you, Amit, for those very insightful comments, and also for what you do here in India to raise the level of thinking on all these topics. Your consistent focus on a holistic view of business and business's role, as opposed to purely, as you said, a profit-centric view. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for the time you spent with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.